If this ecosystem collapses, the entire Amazon rainforest will fall into a state of severe water shortage. At the very heart of South America lies a region that stores 13.7 billion tons of carbon and 5% of the world's living organisms. But the greed to expand farmland has broken this natural groundwater filtration system, triggering a loop of ecological collapse that is draining the largest rivers on the continent. Faced with the prospect of one-third of their vital agricultural land turning into desert, thousands of landowners are being forced to take part in the most ambitious ecological megaproject in the world. Restoring a green corridor 2,600 kilometers long across lands that have already died. The full truth behind this multi-billion-dollar campaign to revive the ecosystem will be decoded right now. For millions of years, the heart of South America has been operated by a gigantic water-pumping machine hidden deep beneath the ground. The Cerrado is not simply a savanna. It is a water filtering and water storage system on the grandest scale on Earth. It holds 5% of all plant and animal species on the planet. But the true life of this ecosystem does not lie in what appears above the ground. The native plants here evolved a special survival mechanism. They drive their roots through geological layers as hard as stone, reaching as deep as 20 meters, the height of a 6-story building, in search of underground water. The underground biomass is many times greater than the visible stems above, creating a vast, upside-down forest system. Technical measurement data show that this immense root network stores as much as 13.7 billion tons of carbon, making it one of the largest greenhouse gas reservoirs in the world. More importantly, this 20-meter root system turns the entire surface into a gigantic biological storage zone. To the north, the Amazon rainforest functions like a fleet of vapor-producing machines, releasing around 20 trillion liters of water into the atmosphere every day. That vapor forms the phenomenon known as the atmospheric river, then moves southward and pours down over the Cerrado. The moment rainwater touches the ground, the deep root system immediately absorbs it, pierces the dense clay layer, and channels the water straight into the aquifers. From these enormous underground reservoirs, water is slowly released, sustaining the flow of the 8 largest river basins on the continent throughout the brutal dry season. The entire South American continent depends on the mechanism of this storage zone to maintain its freshwater supply. Over the past 5 decades, human intervention has erased more than half of the native vegetation cover. Millions of hectares of the upside-down forest were plowed, leveled, and completely uprooted to make way for a new monoculture system, industrial soybeans. The destroyed area is twice the size of all of Germany. In 2024, this region exported more than 100 million tons of soybeans, supplying 80% of the raw material for the global animal feed chain. The world's enormous demand for protein has driven the powerful expansion of megafarms. Yet the physical price has been an irreversible rupture in the water cycle. Commercial soybean varieties are optimized for grain yield, but they possess only shallow root systems, reaching a maximum depth of 1 to 1.5 meters. This vegetation swap creates an exponential chain reaction. With no longer a network of roots reaching down 20 meters to guide the flow, the soil structure quickly becomes compacted and hardened by agricultural mechanization and rising surface temperatures. When the atmospheric rivers pour down water, the rainfall cannot penetrate the hardened crust to enter the groundwater veins. Water runs off across the surface, washing away millions of tons of fertile topsoil, causing large-scale erosion, and evaporating instantly under sunlight. The aquifers are no longer recharged. The underground water pumping cycle has officially stopped working. The latest measurement data show that groundwater levels are falling at a dangerous rate. The rainy season has been pushed back by more than 36 days. The most brutal droughts ever recorded in the history of meteorology are sweeping across the region, severely shrinking the flow of rivers directly connected to the Amazon. A degradation loop has been activated. Agriculture weakens the water retention system, and that very lack of groundwater is now damaging its own harvests. But this great ecological machine is being dismantled in a systematic way by one tiny plant. In Brazil, there exists a strict law on forest management that had been forgotten for many decades. Under this legal framework, every rural landowner is required to preserve a certain percentage of native vegetation on privately owned land. In the central Cerrado, that percentage is set at 35%. Historically, weak law enforcement prevented this law from achieving real effectiveness. Most megafarms chose to pay administrative fines, treating them as a regular operating expense, because that was cheaper and easier than reducing cultivated land in order to restore nature. Ecological restoration techniques were far too complex and lay outside the expertise of the soybean industry. This deadlock was broken by the intervention of the Black Jaguar Foundation. Instead of carrying out lobbying campaigns or protest movements, the organization used an approach based on mechanical engineering and spatial data analysis. They used multispectral satellite data to map tens of thousands of remaining fragments of primary forest, which are now isolated like islands in a sea of soybeans. The solution they proposed was a blueprint for an ecological megaproject building a continuous green corridor 2,600 kilometers long, running along the Araguaia River basin. Focusing restoration along a hydrological lifeline delivers maximum efficiency. Riverside land is often of poor quality for mechanized farming, but it is a strategic location for restoring groundwater levels and accelerating the spread of biodiversity. This corridor will directly connect the core regions of the Cerrado with the southern edge of the Amazon rainforest, covering a restoration area of up to 1 million hectares. To make this scale possible, Black Jaguar does not force farmers to surrender their most fertile land. Instead, they focus on heavily degraded land, low productivity cattle pasture, or abandoned land damaged by improper cultivation. By providing the full package of technical expertise, financing, and labor needed to carry out rewilding on the mandatory 35% of land, the project helps landowners comply with the law in a legitimate way while removing the risk of export restrictions from international traceability regulations. But designing the map on satellite imagery was only the beginning. Carrying out this campaign on the ground is the greatest technical challenge of all. But this drought is not yet the final outcome. Ecological collapse has triggered the most brutal forced intervention campaign in the history of South America. Restoring an ecosystem whose physical structure has been altered cannot be done by scattering seeds at random. It requires a precise logistical and agronomic process. The first step of the process is collecting genetic material. A network of more than 120 local specialists was deployed into the rare remaining natural areas. Their mission is to harvest hundreds of thousands of seeds from more than 80 different native plant species. This biodiversity is the core factor. A restored area without diversity will not have the resilience to withstand the extreme shifts of the savanna climate. These seeds are transported to the Logistical Operations Center, an industrial nursery system with the capacity to produce 500,000 seedlings each year. There, the natural biological mechanism is activated. Technical analysis shows a remarkable trait: seedlings only 2 months old, with very little growth above the surface, have already developed a taproot system extending twice the length of the stem. They are biologically programmed to penetrate straight down into the deep soil layers as fast as possible. Once these seedlings meet the standard, they are transported to degraded land. This is the field reconstruction phase. Land in these areas has gone through decades of machine pressure and hard drying. The soil surface has become compacted and has lost its natural microbial structure. Intervention requires breaking up this hardened crust mechanically to create microclimate points that allow the plants to take hold. Once planted, the root systems of native species immediately begin working like biological drills. They pierce through compacted clay layers, creating countless capillary openings. As soon as the first rainy season begins, instead of running off across the surface, rainwater is retained. This natural mechanism guides the water downward along the roots, deep into the soil, beginning the process of recharging the depleted aquifers. The Cerrado storage system is officially restarted. Within just 36 months of continuous monitoring through sensor camera systems, these arid lands completely changed their physical structure. The deeper the roots penetrate, the more groundwater is retained, creating the conditions for vegetation to grow powerfully. The physical recovery of soil and water structure immediately triggered the revival of the biological food chain. Data from hundreds of monitoring cameras placed along the ecological corridors have confirmed breakthrough results. Not only have basic bird and insect species returned, the highest-level biological signs have appeared. Jaguars and maned wolves, apex predators that require large and stable survival territories, have been recorded moving through the restored areas. The presence of these animals is the clearest biological indicator confirming that the ecosystem has begun operating on its own again. The natural chain of connections has been restored. Beyond its environmental value, this solution delivers direct economic benefits. The restoration of groundwater levels through the 2,600-kilometer corridor is directly protecting the agricultural productivity of the neighboring farms themselves. Farmers have realized that dedicating 35% of lower-quality land to stabilize water supply for the remaining 65% is the most effective solution for maintaining production under climate change conditions. The plan to rebuild the entire Araguaia corridor is scheduled for completion within 2 decades. The Black Jaguar Foundation expects that it will need to plant 1.7 billion trees. This project carries an idea similar to Africa's Great Green Wall campaign to stop desertification. But in South America, it demands a far higher level of hydrological engineering complexity. This is a major challenge in terms of timing, against the rapid expansion of mechanized agriculture projects in unprotected areas. If just one link in this corridor is broken, the ecological connection chain with the Amazon will be affected. Every square kilometer restored not only provides habitat for nature, but also plays a role in stabilizing the global climate regulation system. The quality of life of hundreds of millions of people depends on whether this 20-meter root system can keep pace with the degradation of the continental surface. The recovery process across these arid fields is still unfolding every day. These tiny seeds are carrying within them a decisive role for the hydrological cycle of all South America. The 2,600-kilometer ecological corridor along the Araguaia River is not merely a tree-planting project. It is a critical physical barrier for the South American continent. With a 2-decade implementation path and the goal of establishing 1.7 billion biological water guiding points, this project demands a level of persistence never seen before. Every hectare of degraded land successfully restored will help recharge millions of liters of groundwater back into the system. Rebuilding each square kilometer of natural environment between monoculture farming zones. The decline of the Cerrado's underground forest will directly affect the stability of the Amazon, and that chain reaction will severely weaken the global climate system. This technical and biological intervention process is an extremely urgent mission. The volume of stored groundwater is slowly being restored, but the time available to respond to climate change is running out. Information about the effort to protect this vast water system is often overshadowed by profit reports from the global export industry. In your view, can an ecological restoration project involving 1.7 billion trees succeed under the pressure of industrial agricultural expansion? Or does the world need stricter international regulations to protect critical ecological regions? Please leave your analysis in the comments section. Do not let important environmental projects like this go unnoticed by the public. If this video has brought you valuable information, please share it so scientific knowledge can spread more widely. Press subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next in-depth ecological analysis projects are already ready.